light in the sky and rising in the air. There's a feeling so strong. It's time to light the fire, like a bright shining light. Getting more out of life, sharing time with friends, feeling so strong.
Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy and I'm joined by one of my favourite people of all time, Joe Stanley. Hello, Joe.
Darcy, it's always an absolute joy to be here with you. Can you believe we're in October already? I do not know where the year has gone.
Well, a lot of it's been gobbled up by the pandemic and lockdowns, unfortunately. It's hard to believe we've been living with COVID for nearly 2 years now. You think back to 2018 when you just couldn't possibly have imagined, Joe, the world that we're currently living in.
It is another time, that's for sure. And speaking of things we couldn't imagine 2 or 10 or 20 years ago, Dust, do you remember trying to navigate a location when you were driving with the Melways? I was always lost. Always.
Yeah, just perennially, as you said, I've got that image trying to get to your first job on time with the Melway sitting on your lap, turning it up the wrong way. I'm the worst map reader of all time. I have no idea how we did that. Now you've got a voice that literally gives you directions on where to turn. In fact, the more I think about it, most of the things we do these days can be done effectively with a touch of a button.
Absolutely. What about the days when you go to the library and look up encyclopedias like books? Thank goodness for Google. I don't know what we did about it back then. And then there's selfies, of course, thanks very much to the Kardashians, Facebook, Instagram, Uber, online banking, online everything. I mean, the list of how our lives have changed is just endless.
Walking up and down the lines of Blockbuster trying to find a DVD that...
Seen it.
Click on Netflix now and it all works. It's especially true as well, I think, Joe, for the way we communicate. Would you say you make as many phone calls today as you used to, or are you more of a texter?
Well, you know when you start texting someone and it's backwards and forwards and then you're texting this really long message, you think, why didn't I just pick up the phone and call them? That is so dumb. And actually, I much prefer a conversation on the phone, but you just sort of have to remind yourself of that, I think. And gone are the days, you know, where you talk to someone for hours in one spot on a landline. I remember my mum had a phone in her bedroom and it was such bliss to be a teenager and be able to let in her room and talk to my best friend for hours. Loved that. What about the answering machine? When you'd get home, you're like, woohoo, I've got... my answering machine is flashing at me. It means I'm popular. I love that. And how long, let me ask you this then, Daz. How long, when you're texting backwards and forwards, do you wait before you think, oh, they're not going to text me back?
See, I'm notoriously hopeless on that front, and I apologise to everyone who I should have responded to because I'm really, really bad. I get more upset. I used to get more upset to my younger mates who you'd be in a text exchange with, and then I'm... over it, I'll pick up the phone, I'll ring you. I know you're sitting there on your phone, you're happy to text, but you don't want to talk. People have forgotten the art of having a conversation.
Texting can certainly be cheaper than calling. And a lot of millennials especially prefer these. I've got young people in my life who get cross at me if I actually call them. They're like, why haven't you texted me? Has someone died? But is today's trend of hanging up the phone in favour of instant messaging making us more disconnected? We dialed in an expert for an answer.
There's a lot of positives to texting. You can message someone anytime. You're theoretically not interrupting their day. It's a one-way message. You can say what you want. So there's a lot of pros. The downside to texting all the time over picking up the phone is that you lose the richness of actually talking to someone and storytelling, I suppose. When we speak to each other, we pick up so much richness of the intonation, audio cues from the person's voice, how it changes. They might pause on their sentence. So much information. It's like a little story, where when we're just getting text, it's quite blank and it's missing a lot of information. There's a fantastic neuroscientist called Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, and she's doing a lot of research, very powerful, very well-respected research into the power of words. And she's demonstrating that words can really affect our physiology. releasing calming hormones, sending a message to our body that everything's okay, we're safe, we're in a friendly environment, versus texting, that back and forth volley match of text messages, time-consuming, mixed messages going back through the text messages, and you're not getting that same social connection as well as your own calming release of hormones. Phoning and talking to someone, you can actually be making a difference to someone else's day. You can pick them up.
Looking for a hand to hold.
Set some little goals for yourself, like you might make one call a day or one call a week to a friend, whatever works for you to begin with. Set some parameters around the phone call if you feel you don't have a lot of time. I only have 10 minutes to chat. Can we have a quick chat? Let's have a cup of tea and talk on the phone. You could send a text to sound out someone. Can you talk right now? Again, set some parameters. Quick call, want to hear your voice. Also, sending voice messages. If you're really stuck on time or you think of something and you want to share it with someone and it's, late at night, record the message and you can still send it to someone. Of course, texting has its place, from confirming details, double-checking information, sending sweet messages. I think it's really about moderation. Don't make it the default mode. Actually speak to each other. It's really important. Hear the other individual and feel that sense of community and social connection. Particularly now in lockdown, it's really important to just, even if it's a small amount of time, have that social connection, bond with each other. Do pick up the phone and call, but also text. Have a blend and just see how it can have a positive impact on you.
Darcy, the other big negative of text culture is predictive text. I reckon it's making people really lazy, especially with spelling. I have heard kids say to their parents that there's no need to know how to spell because predictive text fixes spelling errors.
You can get a bit of trouble with predictive text as well sometimes, Joe, if you get that slightly wrong. But all of the Year 12 exams are still handwritten, so that's probably a good thing that's at least keeping the generation up with their spelling.
Yeah, and as you say, the mistypes, you type a word and then it changes to another word that's completely unrelated. You've got to be careful of that. Also, I want to say to my phone, I'm not that obsessed with ducks. It keeps saying, ducking hell, for duck's sake. I don't know, why? Why?
Who would have thought? Now, love it or loathe it, technology has brought us big advances in the way we live and treat many diseases, including Parkinson's. Up next, we'll meet the Aussie skateboarder who's battling the disease right here on the House of Wellness. One of the great highlights of the year, or at least for me anyway, Joe, was the Tokyo Olympics. And I especially loved the new sports, karate and surfing. But the one that captured, I think, the imagination of many was skateboarding. It was incredible to watch 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds winning Olympic medals and doing some incredible things.
Yeah, the skateboarding was particularly great, especially as 18-year-old Keegan Palmer from the Gold Coast took out Australia's first ever Olympic gold medal in the sport. It was so great to see.
He was amazing, Keegan Palmer. Skateboarding takes excellent balance, as you know, and coordination, along with focus, which are some of the things that can be affected by Parkinson's disease.
Melbourne brickie John Wismer is 45 years old. He's been skateboarding since he was a kid. He also has Parkinson's disease. Now he's using his skills to stay focused on the road ahead.
My first symptoms, which I never even really thought about at the time, was twisting spaghetti on my fork. I noticed I couldn't do it anymore. And then at the gym, I passed out a couple of times. That's when I realised it was getting a bit more serious, and we sort of started investigating from that point on. I think it took me a while to absorb the diagnosis because I was pretty matter of fact. I was, okay, I'm diagnosed now, we'll just move on with life. I think my wife Claire hit her harder at first, and then as she seemed to process the information, it sunk in for me and I started really realising what it meant and how it was going to affect our lives.
It came as a very big shock to us when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, because we had only ever thought of it as being something that someone in their 70s or 80s had to deal with. It wasn't until we'd done a bit of research with Parkinson's Victoria that we discovered that it was not as rare as what you would think. It just doesn't get talked about as much. We had 12 months worth of trying to figure out what was wrong with him. He had a fair bit of trouble with depression, thought that he was useless and he couldn't do his job anymore, and he felt like a failure. And when he was diagnosed, we found that it was a relief for him to actually know that it was something that was, I mean, it's serious, but it was something that we could live with.
The impact on our life has been pretty dramatic. We made the decision fairly early on that I would stop working. By that stage, it had become a lot harder for me to continue working as a landscaper. And I became a house father, which is the silver lining, I guess. I worry about the future, what it's going to be like when I'm going to their graduation or something, and what sort of condition I could be in there. Now, getting to the end of the day when I'm tired and having to do dinner and that sort of thing, and having to multitask with children can be a challenge. But luckily I've got a wife that swoops in to rescue me when she sees that's happening. But yeah, for me, the biggest thing that I've got to get over mentally is the future. Skateboarding started through a friend when I was 14. I've kept that up until now. It's been 30 years. It's been a release for me, and I find that even more important now.
John's skateboarding has been the bane of my life forever. We've been together since I was 17. When we were younger, it was always me following him around. He's like, oh, we've got to go to the city so I can skate, and I'd be sitting there watching him, and it's like, one last trick, one last trick.
Since diagnosis, I actually have been skating more, because that was another thing, that you let life get in the way sometimes of the things you enjoy and love, because other priorities come into play. And I decided to do more of the things I love, and skateboarding was one of those things. So while I can, I want to keep skating as long as I can.
We were talking about it because when we were looking up through all of the information to help with Parkinson's, they said that dancing would be a fantastic way to, you know, help with the symptoms and all of that sort of stuff. And John said, I'm not doing that, I'll go skating instead. And he does, and it's exactly the same, really. It's balance and coordination, and all of the things that they suggest are very good for Parkinson's.
When I'm skateboarding, my focus is there and now, on my board, what I'm doing. The outside world doesn't really enter. It's just gives you an escape, I guess. For me, physically, it's my preferred way to exercise because I'm having fun at the same time, yeah.
We definitely live more in the present, yeah, most definitely now. And I think that's fantastic, because we don't want to waste the time that we've got with the kids, and while John's able to do things.
We didn't hide it from the kids. We told them straight away. The first thing they want to know when you tell them that you've been diagnosed with this disease is, are you going to die? And then when you say you're not going to die, then it's all fine. They're happy. My youngest son the other day said, your life's not very good, is it, Dad? I said, my life's excellent. I've got you, I've got the family, and I get to spend more time with you now than I ever would have before. So, yeah, my life's great.
Around 100,000 Australians live with Parkinson's disease. It's the second most common neurological disease in Australia after dementia, Joe. There is no cure, but people like John prove that you can still do many of the things that you love.
While Parkinson's does mainly affect those over 65, nowadays we're seeing a lot more younger people like John being diagnosed. And the positive news is that advances in the treatment of the disease are being made all the time. Here's Melbourne neurologist Dr. Richard Blaze with Sarah Davidson.
Richard, how difficult is it to diagnose Parkinson's disease?
It really depends on the presenting features is all the patients can present in very different ways. A lot of patients ask me, how do I know if I've got it? And the problem with that question is that there's no test to determine whether someone's got Parkinson's. It's it's based on clinical experience and clinical assessment. So while in many cases it's fairly straightforward, when it presents a little bit atypically, it can take some time to get to the bottom of things.
You mentioned the symptoms of Parkinson's. What are the kind of signs that you would look for in trying to make a diagnosis of the disease?
There are several typical signs of Parkinson's, and most of them relate to how it physically presents. So we look for things such as tremor, although not all of our patients get tremor, as well as slowness of movement or bradykinesia, and rigidity. And this is perceived by patients as stiffness, maybe in their hand movements with a bit of loss of dexterity. Later on, patients will present with problems of imbalance as well, but that often occurs a little bit further down the track. So it's not often something that we see up front.
And would you say it's more difficult to diagnose Parkinson's in someone younger than someone older? And if it is, why is that so?
Just because it's less common in people that are a bit younger, certainly under the age of 40, you have that, you're always trying to think about what else it could be. So it might take a little bit more time in that respect. But also, the actual physical symptoms can be a little bit different in that younger cohort. So they might present with a little bit more stiffness or what they might describe as cramping in the feet when they go for a run or something along those lines, which may not alert you to the diagnosis straight away.
How debilitating can it end up being, particularly for someone so young?
Look, pleasingly, if we're talking about the young onset group of patients, one of the features of that group is they respond really well to the medication. We might sort of plan their treatment program a little bit differently to someone else. So to try and do everything we can to delay the onset of any significant disability. And in any patient with Parkinson's, our goal is to support them so that they maintain full independence and can do the things that they want to do with their life, albeit with some of the problems that Parkinson's will present. So while some people will progress to a very severe impact on their independence and mobility, that's a relatively small proportion. And with the number of various treatments we've got now, we seem to be able to delay that a bit longer.
Oh, that's really promising news. Can you describe for us some of the main or the best treatments for addressing Parkinson's?
The cornerstone of our treatment for patients with Parkinson's is to replace their dopamine levels. Dopamine is an important neurotransmitter that is deficient in patients with Parkinson's disease. And so really what we're trying to do mainly is to supplement their stores of dopamine with a medication called levodopa, which is converted into dopamine. And there are also some more so-called advanced therapies or device-assisted therapies, such as deep brain stimulation, which we can use to limit the extent to which patients become dependent on their medications.
And what about in terms of lifestyle? How important is exercise or a particular level of fitness in this disease?
It's a good thing you asked that, and my patients will tell you that I bang on about this incessantly, because really when we treat patients with Parkinson's, there's only so much the medications can do. And really, if you look at the literature, there's a lot of evidence to support the fact that patients who are able to exercise more will end up delaying any onset of disability that accrues because of the Parkinson's. So while the medications are crucial and they're very important, we find that the exercise is almost equally as important in maintaining patients' quality of life.
Joe, if you had to guess the secrets to a long, healthy and happy life, what would they be?
Well, I do know that they've done studies to say that people who are naturally optimistic tend to live longer. So maybe it's a positive outlook. Would that be one? I mean, exercise, I guess, eating well, connecting with friends.
I think surrounding yourself with positive people and having a sense of purpose, I reckon, in life is a big thing. We've got
purpose.
all
That's
the buzzwords, haven't we? But it's definitely a balance of all that, isn't it? Being around people that you generally love and want to connect with and doing something that's meaningful has got to be part of the secrets. But it's interesting to me when you hear of someone who's lived to, say, 100, you never hear them talk about wishing that they had worked more or made more money. Pretty much all of them list family and close friendships as the thing that means the most.
Yeah, I always think of the Australian palliative care nurse who researched and then listed the top 5 regrets of the dying a few years back. She found that people overwhelmingly said they most regretted not living a life that was true to themselves, spending way too much time working and not allowing themselves to be in the moment and just be happy.
Yeah, getting on top of those things is the key to a long and happy life. But what about staying healthy for as long as possible? A world-first study done over 30 years by the University of Melbourne has discovered that the secret to that is surprisingly simple.
One of the reasons we found that exercise was important to do every day is when we did the analysis across 30 years, we found, expecting to find, that you really had to do it when you were younger or you might have missed the boat. We actually didn't find that was the case. So, in fact, you could make up for lost time. There were people in our study who made up for lost time. It turned out that cumulative exercise was the best exercise. So that means what you do across your whole life is what's best for you. Activity is important for every single element of your body. It's important from head to toe. It's important for your brain. It's important for your heart. It's important for your blood vessels, and those blood vessels feed every single one of your organs the nutrients and the oxygen that they need to have optimum functioning. And that's why physical activity you hear about as good to prevent cancer, it's good to prevent heart disease, it's good to prevent brain disease. When people exercise, they're using their muscles, and with the use of the muscles, there's more blood supply going to those muscles. Now, muscles are made up of cells. Every cell is metabolizing. When a cell metabolizes, there's byproducts. These byproducts get washed away and flushed out when there's more blood supply. Also, because of all the metabolism, the cholesterol is reducing in the bloodstream. The blood sugar, which relates to diabetes, is reducing in the bloodstream. And we know that high cholesterols and high blood sugars can lead to diabetes, can lead to heart disease, stroke, and these are the leading causes of death in our community. Also, both of these factors are related to dementia, which is in fact the leading cause of death in women in Australia. There's actually some incredible research that's been done around the world that shows that people who do more exercise, actually their hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that's our memory centre, is bigger when they do exercise. So there are some real physical measures you can show where exercise is having a benefit. Exercise has also been shown to improve people's mental health. So in fact, there's a natural release of endorphins when we do exercise. And yes, with intense exercise, there's more endorphins, but actually with any exercise, you have endorphin release. And there's also some great work that's been done internationally that shows that if you exercise with other people in group programs or going for a walk with your friend around the block, you actually get double the endorphin release. So it's really good to exercise with others. For older people in particular, there's a test we can actually do. It's called the up and go test. And it's literally just getting out of a chair and going for a walk. And that test of how well you get out of that chair can actually predict your chance of dying in the next 7 years. So activity is really important as you get older. I think that incidental exercise is really important. When we looked across 30 years, it was these incidental exercises that were doing the best because it was just a part of their day and they sometimes unwillingly had to do these things. And so they were incorporating this exercise and activity in their life naturally. So incidental exercise is a real one to focus on. Things like taking the stairs instead of the lift. Things like parking, not competing for those 3 parks right at the front of the shopping centre, but maybe walking a little bit further and just incorporate it. Put it between you and where you need to get, because humans are great at overcoming obstacles. So when you get out there and you start walking, and we have actually a great anecdote from a wonderful participant in our book who actually described how the first time she went for her walk around the block, she was stopping and leaning, on various fence posts as she went round. And it was only when she walked around the first time without leaning at all, she suddenly realised, oh my goodness, I've got better. So the body will really adapt. So don't worry that you're not a marathon runner. Just do whatever you can do, but you'll be surprised tomorrow you can do more. If I had to say just one thing to have a healthy, happy life, honestly, it's to think about your health each and every day. That's what we're not doing. We have a to-do list that's so long, we can't possibly incorporate thinking about our health as well. If we could just think about our health just before you reach for that Mars bar, and if we were thinking about it, that's all you have to do, and you will find you get healthier over time.
Earlier we talked about the ease of communication and access to information, so you can understand how easy it is to overcomplicate health and diet with all the stuff that we find on the internet. So it turns out there's no need to spend all those hours at the gym. Good news for me. It's as simple as just moving the body.
And it's the cumulative effect, Joe, of that movement that works as well. And you throw in some mindfulness techniques, and it's a case of not sweating the small stuff either that works as well. After the break, Dr. Nick Carr will help us do just that as he looks at the when, where and why we perspire. Back after this.
Welcome back to the House of Wellness Kitchen, where physical separation will not stop me from sharing my passion of cooking for others. And GQ, you are in luck because today I'm sharing that passion with you, my friend.
And you and I also would like to share wisdom about immune health. It works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to reduce our risk of cold and flu symptoms right through all the seasons.
Mate, I must be vibing you from the computer because that's actually where I got the inspiration for my fire cider today. So it's packed with things like ginger, horseradish, garlic, even chilli, which are fantastic for supporting your immune health.
What an amazing choice of ingredients, Heinzie. And let's look at garlic. Now, garlic's been traditionally used in Western medicine for many, many years, as well as Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine. And it's not hard to see why everybody wants a piece of it. So garlic, Heinzie, brings relief from mild upper respiratory tract infections, and it also reduces the mucus that is trapped there.
And here I was, mate, thinking that garlic was simply being used to fend off vampires from stealing my recipes. But on a serious note, I love that garlic is used for its antibacterial, antimicrobial and antiparasitic properties, and it also does wonders for your immune function.
Well, horseradish is useful in this space as well, Heinzie, because it too is antibacterial and it's anti-inflammatory. So horseradish is very useful for nasal congestion. And look, there's nothing worse than a blocked nose when you're feeling sick.
I hear you, mate. Now, while you can get the health benefits from drinking my fire cider, it is not exactly the quickest option because I've got to store this out of direct sunlight for 6 weeks before straining off and enjoying a shot. But the good news is you can support your immune system with vitamin C-rich foods. We're talking things like citrus fruits, broccoli and capsicum.
I also have a solution, Heinzie. Garlic, horseradish and vitamin C are also available in a high-strength vegan and vegetarian-friendly supplement.
Look at us sharing the immune health love. But I got to say, mate, that's actually where the sharing's got to end because I'm not giving up any of this liquid gold.
Look, I wonder, could you post me that recipe, please, Heinzie? Could you do it today?
My Wi-Fi is just breaking up. I can't quite hear you. Hello? I'm in a tunnel. The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by Go Healthy's Go High Strength Horseradish Garlic Plus Vitamin C. A vegan-friendly, high-strength formulation to help maintain a healthy immune system.
Heinzie and GQ, they're turning up the heat with some seriously spicy and alcohol-free cider. Now, Joe, we recently touched on how giving booze a break is good for your health, and your husband, Daz, has given it up altogether, which you said got mixed reaction from his mates. How's that going?
Yeah, look, I've got to say I couldn't be more proud of Daz. He's just clocked up 5 years since he stopped drinking, and at the time there were mates in his life who they couldn't kind of understand why he was doing it. They didn't realise it was the best decision for him and his health and his relationships. And, you know, his best friends, they were really supportive, but then there were some that I think it just shined a light on their own behaviours a little too much. And it was such a drinking culture that he did lose a few mates, but I'm so proud of him. It was the greatest thing he did.
Well done, Daz. It's a great achievement all around. And to get around the awkwardness, McGuigan Wines have not only got a zero alcohol range, but also a tongue-in-cheek Zero Explanations Handbook to handle questions that get thrown at non-drinkers, Joe.
Yeah, it's got things like if someone's asking you, why aren't you drinking? You could say, well, my hangover called from tomorrow's spin class and begged me not to. I don't know if you've ever had a hangover in a spin class, but it is not a good time.
I haven't had that before.
Or things like, I'll enjoy tonight and maybe even more tomorrow.
Okay.
Or this way I can hit pause and still play, because the fact is, you don't have to drink to have fun.
Yeah, fair point. With nearly half of regular wine drinkers in Australia now actively trying to reduce their alcohol intake, the timing couldn't be better, Joe. Now, from looking at the liquids we put in our bodies, we're going to change gear here to examining the sweat that comes out.
Back to spin class.
Are you as squeamish about other people's perspirations as much as you are about feet, Joe? Because I know that's something that gets you a bit.
Yeah, I'm not into feet, but I don't mind sweat. What are you going to do? You're exercising? It's OK. I mean, I don't want it on me. Like, I don't want someone else's sweat on me. You can't avoid
It's a bit
it.
disturbing if you've been to the gym and someone's, you know, and you jump on a bike.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
poor etiquette.
Oh, you've got to have a towel. Oh, my gosh. People who don't know how to look after that whole thing in a gym. I mean, it's been a while since I've been in a gym, to be honest.
Well, it's true. Good point. Now, during intense exercise in the heat, athletes can sweat up to 6% of their body weight. So how much is that in millilitres or litres? And how do we sweat less, especially in terms of learning not to stress? The cool-headed doc, Nick Carr, is here with the answers.
I don't remember much from my school physics lessons, but what I do remember is that the specific heat capacity of water is 4,200 joules per kilogram per degree centigrade. To which you might reasonably respond, what? Well, translated into English, it means that water is really good at absorbing heat, which is why when we humans are too hot, we use water to cool down in the form of sweat. Now, it's sometimes said that men sweat and women glow. So why is it that some people seem to sweat much more than others? Well, like so many things in medicine, there's no simple answer. It's a combination of genetics, hydration, diet, fitness, lifestyle, and, well, you get the picture. But whoever you are, whatever your exercise regime, it's cool to sweat. But then why do we sweat when we're nervous? Well, when we're tense or anxious, adrenaline is coursing through our bodies, and that stimulates the sweat glands. It's part of our fight or flight response, which is designed to get us ready to either fight off the tiger or run like hell. And what are we doing? We're sitting in the chair, sweaty palm, waiting for the interview to begin. Next. Oh yes, lovely to meet you. Now, I often hear talk about sweating out the toxins. So let's nail this one down right from the start. Sweat is over 99% water with just a few salts and proteins, not a toxin in sight. And when it comes to salt, there's not actually that much. So those sports drinks are really only necessary if you do a huge amount of exercise. For the rest of us, plain old tap water will do just fine. So while we're busting a few sweat myths, let's tackle a couple more. Number one, sweating alone will not make you lose weight. Now, sure, the exercise that makes you sweat will help, but just sitting in a sauna and sweating, no. And sweat itself doesn't smell. But if you leave it on the skin, the bacteria can get to work and it can get a bit ripe. Hence, shower after your workout. And there are all sorts of myths about antiperspirants and deodorants, everything from breast cancer to Alzheimer's disease. But there's actually no scientific proof that they're harmful at all. And in fact, for people who have excessive sweating, a thing called hyperhidrosis, they can be really helpful. Sweat is part of life. It's also part of our lexicon. Honest sweat, cold sweat, no sweat, mate, blood, sweat and tears. Just don't sweat the small stuff. That would be a waste.
Tegan, you're an Ayurvedic practitioner. Can you tell us what that is?
So Ayurveda is a traditional medicine that originated from India, and it's over 5,000 years old. So in Ayurveda, the treatment's based on understanding that everyone is unique and everyone's an individual and has their own mind and body type or constitution and pattern of energy. So for example, if I was to give you an assessment, Sarah, I'd ask you different questions about your mind, your emotions, look at your physiology, and also ask questions like, does your temperature run hot or cold? What weather do you prefer? If your joint cracks and things like that. And this is to help me understand what your dosha is, or your mind-body type, and then we take it from there.
And you would tell me that I'm Vata dosha.
Yeah, I can see that. You've got beautiful vitality and great communication and good energy, which is Vata qualities.
Well, I can see that it's a very personalised approach to wellness. What's something in Ayurveda that's a more universal remedy we can all benefit from?
Yeah, there's a couple of practices. So one that I love to teach is called pranayama, or yogic breathing. And there's a particular technique called nadi shodhana, or alternate nostril breathing, and this is fantastic for settling the mind and relaxing and calming the nervous system. So do you want to give it a go?
I definitely need some of that.
Okay, yeah. So just sit comfortably in your chair and closing down the eyes, and just taking your right hand and closing off the right nostril with the thumb, and taking a long, slow inhale through the left. Closing off the left nostril with the ring finger, opening up the right, and take a long, slow exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Closing the right, and exhale through the left for one full breath. And you can open your eyes.
I already feel more relaxed.
And another beautiful thing that you can try is there's a wonderful herb called ashwagandha. And so ashwagandha has a really prominent place in Ayurveda because it's really beneficial to a wide range of people. And it's one of my favourite go-to herbs in clinical practice because it's wonderful for combating stress. It's something that really builds resilience in the body. So we use it in clinical practice as a nerve tonic. It's wonderful for sleeplessness, so as it helps to combat the root cause of insomnia or poor sleep, which is stress mainly. It's wonderful for the mind, so it helps with concentration, memory, and just for overall vitality and rejuvenation.
Definitely sounds like something I need to get into my regime.
Yeah, definitely. And Ayurveda is all about routines. It's all about rituals. So we have different seasonal routines, and particularly we have daily routines. So it's these little things that we do every day that can chip away to create and maintain optimal health. So taking something like ashwagandha every day will really help create that harmony in mind and body, which is what Ayurveda is all about.
So starting a daily habit like supplementing with ashwagandha sounds like a really easy way to incorporate this philosophy into your life and generally feel more settled.
So Ayurveda is all about restoring balance, and ashwagandha is really our hero herb for that.
Well, anything we can do to lower stress levels has to be a good thing, Joe. And Ayurveda is an ancient form of healing that centres around harmony and inner balance. It's the Indian and Eastern technique, and our place in Bali, Sukhabati, Bali, is based on Ayurvedic health. What I love about it is they really are into preventative health and doing things consistently all the way around, from nutrition to diet to the brilliant healing technique called Panchakarma, where you really clear the system a couple of times a year. So I feel like we've unlearned a lot of the ancient wisdom, particularly in these times where we are focusing on our health more than ever.
I totally agree. For me, it's been traditional Chinese medicine over the years, but there are so many wonderful traditional ancient wisdoms that we would love to engage with more, I think. One man who knows the healing power of herbs is Gerald Quigley. Here he is with some calming words with answers to some of your most requested questions.
Cold sores appear as painful little blisters, all caused by the herpes simplex virus. And they occur at the junction of the skin and the mucous surfaces of the mouth, and sometimes even the nose. A healthy immune system plays a very important role here, so sufficient levels of zinc and vitamin D, very important. The amino acid lysine also treats and prevents herpes infections. Anecdotal evidence suggests that avoiding nuts and chocolate can also play a role. I know that sounds tough, but it's worth trying. The Epstein-Barr virus is part of the herpes family and is responsible for that dreaded condition called glandular fever, which we often see in young adults. It's spread by close contact, often kissing, and troublesome symptoms include swollen glands, sore throat, fatigue, fever. The herb of choice here is astragalus, and it's designed to hasten recovery. It's not exactly gourmet flavour, but mixing it with blackcurrant juice makes it easier to swallow. Clenching your teeth at night can cause intense jaw pain, and it can even wear down your teeth. Stress is an underlying factor, and that's why magnesium is a very important mineral. Use it in powder form because you can work out the best and exact dose for you. Adding some sedating herbs to the magnesium can get you a good night's sleep, as well as massaging the area just near your ears. That can make a difference. If you find that you're still clenching your teeth a lot, regular visits to the dentist are very important. And of course, if symptoms persist, speak to your health professional. They'll give you lots of advice. But most importantly, be well, live well, stay well.
Well, Joe, keeping the phone theme going, how long do you think you could go without your mobile phone?
I fantasise about not needing it at all, but I reckon maybe within a day I'd be wondering.
So I think we're going to look back and, the moment that the iPhone, the smartphone, has just changed the world, I'm not 100% sure for the better.
You think we're all dumber for it?
Correct. And you're just mindlessly looking at it so often, it just disturbs me. How's this for a stat, though? More than half of Gen Z Aussies think that they could survive 3 days without food, but could go no longer than 4 hours without the internet. Get your head around that.
Well, for me, I think it would be perhaps the other way around. I could survive maybe 3 days without the phone, but I don't think I could last 3 minutes without food. I'm thinking about food right now.
Well, fair enough, Joe. This was also part of a study of online consumption trends with young people here in the US and in the UK. The millennials are also a bit internet obsessed. About 27% reckon they can't go longer than an hour without logging on.
And at the opposite end of the scale, 23% of boomers say they can go 2 to 6 days without accessing the internet. I reckon my mum would disprove that. But how long do you reckon you go without logging on?
I'd like to think I'd be okay, but I still find myself having told the kids off, get off your phones, and then they look back at me and I'm scrolling through a news site that I just have no real benefit from.
Yes.
It's disturbing,
It is
isn't
a real bummer being a role model, isn't it? It's so tedious.
It's overrated, isn't it? Well, that's our show for today. Check out the House of Wellness website for more of anything you've seen on the show and much more.
Catch me and Gerald quickly on the House of Wellness radio show on Sunday, and tune into my new podcast, Best of You, covering all kinds of mental health challenges, from work stress and burnout through to managing the grief from losing a loved one. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts.
Great stuff, Joe, doing brilliant work there. And you can check out the Empowering Leaders podcast. In recent weeks, I caught up with Laura Henshaw, who's a 28-year-old CEO of a business called Keep It Clean, and she's unbelievable. And Pat Cummings, the legendary Australian cricket fast bowler. I'm really enjoying chatting to the next generation of leaders. Thanks, as always, to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. Stay well, and we'll see you next time.